In Bethany Joy Lenz's book, Dinner for Vampires, there are some parts of it that just jumped out so much to me in the way that they illustrated thought control. So I'm going to talk about that. Thought control is really important because, in terms of the different types of control that people in groups can have over us, if they can inculcate thought control, it means that even when that group leader or person isn't present and the individual is removed from that environment, the control that that group has is like self-perpetuating within that person's own mind. And there are lots of different mechanisms for like planting that and fostering that in a person, but they're such a good example in Joy's book. So this is after Joy is brought into this meeting where she is kind of placed in the center in the circle, and this is all done under the guise of accountability and being in community and being in relationship and like really holding each other accountable. And Les has just told her that that she's trying to play God instead of relying on the people around her to make different decisions and inform her choices. And we often see like a big way that control is justified and framed within religious communities and faith spaces is as a form of accountability. Sometimes a practice of confession is used for that. Sometimes it's like a small group that is actually used as a way to surveil and monitor group members. But I thought that this was a really interesting one. So they bring her into this meeting and they talk about this idea of a legal question. So I'm just going to read this part of it. So he says, "You're letting yourself ask too many illegal questions," he said. Illegal questions. Thoughts you can no longer allow, like wondering if you belong in this family. And so this is a introduction of a way to really undermine this idea that even the thoughts that she has in her own head are not safe, because at any point she could be violating these rules by just thinking and questioning things. And her group wants her to outsource that thinking to the members of her group so that they can maintain that control and help her and hold her accountable, and so that she's not playing God. So aside from this really heavy-handed spiritual manipulation, there's something else that really jumped out at me. So within this framework of living in community and being in relationship, being accountable, you can really justify things that would normally be a very clear violation of boundaries, and where these group leaders really have this sense of entitlement to know a person's most innermost thoughts and desires, and to give those up and surrender those without really putting up a fight, and normalizing that. And I'm going to read you this part. So they've got her here for this meeting. They've convinced her that it's for her own good, and she doesn't even know like why she's there. She's really questioning, like she's like racking her brain, being like, what have I done wrong? Like what is like the thing they're really going to like point to? And then Les sees that her journal is under her chair, and he just tells her that we're going to look at your journal. Like, why don't you read something from your journal to us? And so this is something that outside of this environment, you would know right away is such an invasion of privacy. And Joy describes how her journal is like a sacred, safe space for her, and that there are so many things that she just bounces off there. And maybe even later she doesn't hold those same thoughts and beliefs, but it's like a really private, safe space for her to just work out things, which is healthy and totally okay. But they really like weaponize this against her. And I think that this is actually intentional and calculated, because abusers and controlling people will intentionally seek out your safe spaces, your safe communities, anything that cultivates and continues to build your sense of self-trust. And so making it seem totally normal and acceptable that within this environment of relationship and accountability that she should just open her journal and read to all the members of the group that are there for them to pick apart anything and judge her based on her innermost thoughts is so representative of the crazy high level of thought control that was present in this group. And this part right here. And I'm not trying to hurt you, baby, but I just find the timing extremely convenient that while you're in a season of budding success, you also happen to be unable to make time for the people you know will hold you accountable. I'm just not buying it. Oh boy. So like, even if she wanted to back out and reverse out of this small group ambush, they're framing it that already priming the situation that it would look like she was resisting accountability, resisting this community, this group's kind of input in her life and their leadership, their spiritual parenting, as they talk about it in this book. So like they've really trapped her in here it will be very hard to kind of extricate herself from the situation without causing significant ruptures within that group dynamic and without signaling to Les and to Kurt that they do not have the control over her that they once had. So it's not really a safe thing for her to be able to do, but I just thought it was a really compelling example of how this can work. And listen to this. So Joy says, everything was said to me in kind tones with passion and intention. Les had figured out a way to get everyone in the room, including me, to believe they were being loving by exposing and dissecting my childhood emotional wounds and tying them to current behavior. This went on for 3 hours. So talk about significant exhaustion and then this sense of like having their control even further entrenched and normalizing that level of intrusive, violating, entitlement to her innermost thoughts and feelings, normalizing that as a part of this process of living in a healthy community where you live in relationship with other people. So such an incredible example, really well fleshed out in Joy's book.